of the workshop Wednesdays. You all just got a notification saying that this meeting will be recorded. Again, your cameras and microphones will stay muted throughout the entirety of the session. However, if you don't feel comfortable with the session being recorded, go ahead and put leave meeting, and then you can contact your ETS advisor to get this information directly to you. If not, just go ahead and hit continue. So like I mentioned, this is our third workshop Wednesday. Today we'll be covering the PIQ questions. So hopefully you are all planning on applying to a UC, and if not, a lot of the information that's going to be shared here will be useful for you in other avenues, like if you're applying to private schools or if you're doing EOP applications for the Cal State schools. A lot of the same information can be used when you're writing those essays, okay? So I'm actually really excited. We have about 40 students who have attended both previous workshops. So that's awesome. You are all on track to get that. Those 44 of you are on track to get that certificate, which is really, really great. I did want to let you all know that we did, sorry, before I go ahead on that, please make sure that in the chat box right now, you're introducing yourself, your first and last name, in addition to the school that you attend. This is how we do our roster for those certificates, but also how we're gonna pick our pool for the opportunity drawing at the end of this workshop, okay? So go ahead and make sure you put your first and your last name as well as the school that you attend, okay? For those of you that are not ETS students that are just joining us for the first time and haven't provided your information to us, you can always email us at ets@csuob.edu or go to our website at csuob.edu/ETS and provide your information in order to get an application packet in the mail. You can also follow us on Instagram. Our 2 Instagram handles are there for the South-based schools and then for the LA, Long Beach, Linwood, and Compton area schools, okay? One last thing is that we did add a new workshop. So on August 12th, we will have a kind of more freestyle workshop with our college advisors, and they'll be answering questions. We've noticed that a lot of you have questions about the college experience and what it looks like at different campuses. And so we have a bunch of different college advisors that went to different schools. We want to give you all the opportunity to ask them about their experience. We'll be moderating kind of like a panel for you all. But you can also ask your own individual questions that you might have about specific schools. And then after, we'll have a fun trivia night. It'll be really great. We'll have lots of prizes to give away. We'll be giving out some ETS swag and college merch and things like that. So I really want to encourage you all to join. We haven't added that to the registration yet, but we will, so you can register for that workshop. And as always, we'll forward you that information after, okay? So like I mentioned, today we're covering the PIQs. So we have Paola, and I apologize, I don't have your last name up right now, but she's joining us from UCI. She actually gives this presentation to the college advisors. So you guys are getting the information firsthand right now, which is really awesome. And then after that, we have 2 PIQ readers for ETS. So if you're new to the program or you haven't really seen this around, we do allow our students to have individualized access to revisions done by 2 highly trained essay readers. So they are KT and Jamie. They'll be giving a short presentation about what their service looks like after Paola talks to us about the PIQs. This is a flyer. We'll go ahead and send this out to all of you, specifically the juniors who are joining us or the rising seniors who are joining us. That way you can have that information. But again, this is just kind of to give you a heads up of what's coming, okay? All right, so without further ado, I do have her name now, Paola Sotelo from UCI.
All right, hi everyone. Like Andres said, my name is Paula Sotelo. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the personal insight questions. But briefly before I begin, I am a program coordinator for the Early Academic Outreach Program. I currently work in the Anaheim region for the most part, and I service 8 schools. Some of my further schools out are El Rancho, I service Orange High School, and I service Paramount, so I'm in that area generally. But today I'm going to give you tips on the personal insight questions. So hopefully y'all have, some pens, pencils, a notebook to take notes on, and hopefully you have questions. So we will be going through the questions at the end, and I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have like your reactions available, right, I'm going to be using some reactions, or if you can type in the chat box, I'm going to be looking at that too. So without further ado, PIQs. One of the first things I want to start off with, though, is something that we called comprehensive review. And I'm going to go over exactly what comprehensive review is. But what do you think as a student are two things that students focus on the most in terms of college applications? There are two things that students feel or think that those are the two things that are going to affect all of their whole college admissions process. Can anyone take a wild guess? And there's like no right or wrong answers because it probably is part of the 14 factors. All right, I already saw it in there, grades and SATs. So yes, the two things are your GPA and SAT scores. I feel like those are two of the things that students tend to focus on the most. But I'm here to tell you that that is actually not true. There are 14 things that the UCs are looking for when we are reviewing your UC application. And that's what we call the comprehensive review. So you have the academic portion and then you have the non-academic portion. So yes, on the academic portion, you have, grade point average and you have test scores. Test scores have changed this year and I'll go into that a little bit later on in the presentation. But aside from that, we also look at the number of A through G courses that you took. We look at the number of, AP and honors courses that you took. We look at the eligibility in the local context, your quality of your senior year, whether you took a full load of courses, maybe you were TAing for 2 periods, maybe you had half days, right? So what does that senior year look like? We also look at the outstanding performance in one or more academic subjects. So if you want to major in nursing or anything heavy that's like STEM related, right? What were your grades like in your math and science courses? So that's just one portion that we look at, the academic side. But then we have the non-academics. So we look at, did you play clubs? Were you involved in clubs? Did you play sports? Did you do community service? Did you help within your school or outside in your community? Did you participate in educational outreach programs? So ETS being one of them, right? Geographic location. We know that students' opportunities look very different from a school here in Orange County than a student who's maybe in a more rural area, maybe an hour north of Sacramento, right? So we take all these things into consideration. So when you're working on your applications, don't focus so much on just your GPA and your test scores. Remember, there are 12 other things outside of that that we are looking at when we are considering you for the UC system. So don't sell yourself short. Keep an open mind, right? So the UC personal insight questions. When we are talking about the PIQs, we want to know, when you think about them, what do you want the UCs to know about you, right? So you want to get personal with them. This is not a time for you to be humble. This is kind of the time for you to brag and really tell us outside of what's already on your actual application in your own words. Why are you unique, right? Which questions you choose are entirely up to you, but you have to select the ones that are the most relevant towards your experience and reflect your individual circumstances. So don't get so caught up on like, oh, well, everyone's answering this question. It's more about, do you have something to talk about for that question? Is it relevant to your experience? So don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Focus on yourself, right? Personal. These are very personal questions. So you want to make sure they're strictly about you. So pretty straightforward. I'm sure you've seen the questions before. There's 8 questions to choose from. You have to answer 4 out of the 8. There is a maximum word count of 350 words. There is no minimum, but you want to maximize your word count as much as possible. So we always recommend students a minimum of 250. But again, you want to use as many words as you possibly can to meet that 350 mark. 350 words is not even an essay. It's really just a short, small paragraph. So again, you want to make sure you use as much as possible. There is no wrong question to answer. All questions have the same value. It's not like we're looking for one over the other. And all of the answers go to all campuses. So similar to the CSU application, it's one application, like one general system, and you kind of just click on which schools you want to apply to, and then all the information will be sent out to all of the schools that you apply to. So it's not like you're going to have to be doing 4 individual applications per campus. It's just one application, and you individually select, and they all go out. So the basics of this. It's not an essay. So I want you from here moving on forward don't think about this as an essay, right? I feel like when students think about essays, you think that it's going to take a long time. It's going to have to be like super concrete, all of this like good stuff, which it is, but this is not an essay. So start getting rid of that word. This is a response. Because it's not an essay, you're going to want to skip the intro and a conclusion, right? So you're just going to want to get straight to the point. I don't want, you know, flowery language, and I'll give you all these tips at the end, but I'm just saying, since this isn't an essay, you want to make sure you skip that intro and conclusion. You want to get straight to your point, what it is that you learned, and how you overcame whatever it is you're talking about. There's 2 parts to all PIQs that are important in every single response. You want to make sure that you have details, right? You want to go through this as much as possible so that we can create that vision or whatever it is you're trying to tell us, so that we can see that. And you want to talk about reflection, right? A lot of these experiences, you probably grew from them, you learned something from them, they had meaning. So you want to make sure you reflect on these experiences. I always recommend students to take a day or you know, take an hour out of your day where you start reflecting on every single year in high school. So look at your freshman year and look through your transcript, right? Did you have good grades? Did you maybe struggle in a class or two? And talk about, like, write that down, right? Why were you struggling in these courses? What were the extra things that you were doing? So were you in playing sports? Were you volunteering, right? So you want to start reflecting on every single year. Go through sophomore year, start doing the same. Junior year, I think everyone had a significant impact, right? Everyone experienced COVID. And we'll talk about that too, how you can talk about those in your questions. But reflection is a big part of these questions. So you want to make sure that you're able to reflect on your PIQs. And then the next thing is provide examples. So every single response should be a different example, which goes into do not repeat examples. So if you're going to be talking about playing basketball as your greatest skill, don't talk about it being like your leadership opportunity, right? You want to make sure you provide 2 different examples. So I'll go into that into a little more depth, but every single PIQ should be a different part of your life that I get to learn about you. So you should be able to provide 4. So we're going to go into the questions. I'm going to really break them down for you, try to give you some examples. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask. This is your opportunity. I'm just here to give you the information, but this is really about you. So number 1, leadership. Describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. If you have a notebook, if you have the PIQs in front of you, go ahead and circle the word leadership, because that's what this question is asking about, right? There's 2 things, there's one thing to know. There's traditional roles and then there's non-traditional roles. I feel like a lot of students tend to focus on the traditional roles, which are, you know, having those titles. So I was captain of a basketball team. I was president of ASB. I was, you know, I had a title, I had a position in a club. So yes, those are traditional roles of leadership, but then you also have the non-traditional roles, right? So the things that you do at home, taking care of your siblings or maybe even your grandparents, right? As they get older, you're a caretaker. If you are helping your siblings with homework or your cousins with homework, you could potentially be a tutor. So don't always think of these non-traditional roles as, oh, it's just whatever, it's just something I have to do. But really, you're taking leadership at home. So I do have a video, hopefully it plays, where Berkeley Admissions talks about what leadership looks like. So it's about a minute or 2. Go ahead and listen, take notes. It really goes into it, like more into the nitty gritty.
Each student brings something to Berkeley, and one of the most important things they can bring is their leadership.
Leadership's important to the Berkeley culture as a whole because it's one of the elements that we think help students succeed here on our campus. Leadership, initiative, persistence, tenacity, all of those add up to a student who will do well here on campus and then take those skills out into the world when they graduate.
Leadership is an important skill for a Berkeley applicant to have because it really sets you apart from all other applicants. Leadership is a tangible quality that we can pick up on from the information that you present on your application for admission.
There are different forms of leadership that we look at in the application process. Some of those more traditional forms of leadership can include being the treasurer of a club or student organization, being the president of the student body or student government, being the captain of a sports team. But there are also non-traditional forms of leadership that don't necessarily come with titles. Those personal circumstances, such as being charged with picking up your younger siblings from school because you live in a single parent household, working in a low income household, taking care of a sick parent or grandparent, is also a form of leadership.
We value that here at Berkeley in our application process. And we want you all to know that we look at that type of leadership in a similar light as if you were the class president.
So leadership can come through on the application through the appropriate sections such as extracurricular activities, community service to students responding to the personal insight questions, particularly leadership, and implementing and showing us exactly how students are leaders in their community.
And there's so many opportunities to talk about your experiences. So there is an additional comment section. There are 2 of them where students can go into more detail with how they may have been a leader in the classroom and how any other situations they might have faced that they couldn't share otherwise in the application.
Students can express leadership through their extracurricular activities, in communities, through their volunteer work, in internships. So really everywhere in the application, the students are able to show that leadership, that initiative that we look for.
What we want is for the student to really advocate for themselves and talk about what types of leadership they have. It is up to the student to explain that to us, but we see leadership in multiple aspects.
And we are looking for leaders both inside and outside of the classroom. We are looking for students who will aid in our vitality as a campus, who will bring their potential to us, which comes to us as a form of leadership.
And so this is just Berkeley talking about leadership, but all of the UCs, exactly what they mentioned, that's what we're looking for. So don't sell yourself short. Don't think that your experiences aren't valued, just because they're non-traditional roles. So remember, there's non-traditional and traditional roles, and keep that in mind when you're thinking about what leadership roles you're taking within those 2 different kinds. All right. Number 2, creativity. Every person has a creative side, and it can be expressed in many ways. Problem solving, original and innovative thinking, and artistically, to name a few. Describe how you express your creative side. For this one, go ahead and circle the word creative or write the word creative down. And we're really looking for, okay. We're looking for creative in the way that you think. So when you think of civil engineers, they're creative in the way that they build roads so that traffic could flow better. When you are thinking of business owners, right? I have a really good example. I had a student one year talk about how she really liked makeup. And, she had all these different brushes, loves blending colors. And at first I thought she was going to talk about it in an artistic way. But what was creative about it was that she started doing makeup for friends, for prom, for homecoming, for all of the formal dances. And she started reaching out to other high schools, letting them know about her service. And she created a business out of it. So she created a business plan. And the money that she used that she gained from that, she was using it to pay for her college apps and for her tuition. So that was creative in the way that she was thinking. So you don't necessarily have to go out and start building business plans to be creative, but how do you think creatively in the way that you solve problems? And you can think about this in many different ways. So just make sure you're able to write your thought process down on paper so that we are able to see that and how you express that creative side. Number 3, talent or skill. What would you say is your greatest talent or skill? And then the second part to this is how have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? So there's 2 questions in this one question. The first part is what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? So straight up, just tell me what that talent or skill is, right? Do you like playing, is it basketball? Is it playing the trumpet, playing the flute? Maybe it's the piano. What is that talent or skill? The second part of that is how have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? So give me some solid numbers as to how much time you dedicated to this, right? it's not like you were born out of the womb and you're playing like Beethoven, right? You had to learn how to play the keys, get some rhythm, and finally like learn how to get rhythm to play the keys. So, you know, maybe you can tell me you started playing at the age of 5, you've dedicated, you know, 20 hours every single week to playing the piano after school. So give me a solid number, give me a concrete time. That way I can envision that on top of everything else that you've been doing, right? So if you told me playing piano is your greatest talent or skill, and you're gonna tell me you dedicated 15 hours a week, I'm like, okay, this student dedicated 15 hours a week, plus they're taking maybe 5 AP courses. They're also playing soccer and they're doing community service. Like, how does the student manage their time, right? So now I'm getting more of a vision of who you are as a whole. So make sure you include that in your essay or in your response. Number 4, what educational barrier or opportunity? So describe how you have taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. In this question, there are one of 2 things that you can answer. The first part that you can answer, and you can go ahead and underline educational opportunity, is how you took advantage of a significant educational opportunity. That's the first part. So you can put circle educational opportunity, maybe put a little 1 next to it. The second part, or the second thing you can answer, is how you overcame an educational barrier. So you can put like a little 2 under that. So you don't want to answer both, you want to answer one or the other. So when we're talking about a significant educational opportunity, it would be something that you benefited from in your high school education, right? So maybe you took advantage of these summer presentations that ETS has been putting on for you, all these workshops, right? That's taking advantage of an educational opportunity. Maybe you took advantage of how many AP courses your high school offered. Maybe it was the amount of counselors that your school had and you can always go talk to one of them whenever you need it. Maybe they had the right resources that you needed as a student to succeed at your school, right? Maybe there were tons of other outreach programs that you got to be involved in, all of them, and you got to, from that, you got to visit all these colleges, you got all this college knowledge, so that's how you took advantage of that. So the first part, like I said, is a significant educational opportunity and how you benefited from that in your high school education. The second part, or the second thing that you can answer, would be kind of the complete opposite. So something that lacked in your education. Maybe you didn't have enough counselors to really go talk to one of them whenever you needed. Maybe you didn't have enough AP courses, or the AP courses that you needed to really feel challenged as a student. Maybe they didn't have the, enough educational outreach programs. Maybe they were all federally funded and you're an undocumented student and you don't qualify for the federally funded educational outreach programs. So, think about your high school career. That's why I said go back and reflect on every single year what you've been doing so that you can think about these things. I know that with COVID right now, a lot of you struggled. Maybe your high school didn't give out Chromebooks or, didn't give out materials in order for you to succeed on this virtual learning world, right? So you want to think about these things. And I'll go more into depth on where you want to talk about like COVID and really like tell us what it is you struggled on during this time. But like I said, answer one or the other, don't answer both. I know that sometimes students tend to think like, oh, well, there was a barrier and I used an educational opportunity to overcome that barrier. I can totally see where you can, how you can see that, but sometimes that gets lost in your writing and in translation. So focus on one or the other, don't focus on both. So just let you know, breathe, we're halfway there. Before I continue though, I kind of wanted to get a little bit interactive, right? So if you have the opportunity to use your reactions or maybe in the chat, I'm gonna ask you which out of the 4 questions you think so far you might be answering in your PIQs. So if you think you're gonna answer the leadership question, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. And this is just for me to see who is gonna be answering the leadership question. All right, I see some thumbs up. All right, cool. All right, give me a round of applause if you plan on answering the creativity question. Are you creative? Any round of applauses? Okay. I see some round of applauses. Okay, cool. All right, what about number 3, the talent or skill? Okay, I see some thumbs up, some round of applauses. All right, go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you're gonna answer the number 4, educational opportunity, or the barrier. All right, I see a few. So as you can see, it's a really, well, I don't know if y'all are looking at the thumbs up and applauses, but it's a really good mix, right? So like I said, only answer the ones that you feel you can really talk about. Don't force yourself to answer any of these questions if you have nothing to talk about. And I'll talk about why that's important. But I thought this was funny. College, right? We all envision it. We all want to be there. SpongeBob wanted to go to college, so just something funny. But all right, number 5, personal challenge. So describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. How has this challenge affected your academic achievement? Now for this one, you want to write down personal challenge. And this is just honestly personal to you. I've seen students talk about, going through depression, and now they have to go see a therapist. They had to tell their families, they had to tell their friends, and they're trying to overcome this depression, right? Students talking about their parents getting a divorce. They have to go from mom to dad, when they could have been using that time to study. I've had students talk about going through cancer, right, while they're in high school, and talking about how that was super challenging for them to go through that during that time. Maybe it's talking about how at some point you were getting evicted every single month because it's so expensive to live in Southern California. Maybe it was you didn't know when your next meal was going to be because your family was struggling during that time, right? So what is that significant challenge? For a lot of you, sometimes these challenges are something that you do every single day and they don't seem significant to you anymore just because you're so used to it. But when you honestly start to think about it, you probably shouldn't have to be going through these things, right? I've had students who have to take the bus in the morning to get to school, but they have to take like the public transportation, and they have to be up by 5 in the morning to get on the bus to make sure they make it to school on time. You should not be having to get up at 5 in the morning to get on the bus, right? If you're a student, you're probably have AP homework. That student is probably going to sleep at 2, 3 in the morning. Having to be up by 5 to get on the bus, you're getting maybe 2 hours of sleep. So you want to make sure you're aware of those things, right? So don't try to be humble here and be like, oh, it's okay, like I sleep on a couch, even though we only have 1 room in the house and there's like 15 of us in the house, but at least I have a couch to sleep on. Like, I'm glad you have the couch, but that is still significant, right? So you may want to make sure you talk about that. I don't know what's going on with the screen, cool. But you want to make sure you talk about those things. The second part of this is how did this challenge affect your academic achievement, right? So some of these things might have affected, your grades. Some of these things might not have. I know that for the student who was going through chemo while in school, right? It took a lot of energy out of them. They had to drop, they weren't going to school on the regular, had to drop a semester, come back, and then pick up. If you're going through depression, that can be challenging, right? One day you're feeling well and the next day you're not. So it kind of takes a toll on your academic achievement. So talk about that. If it didn't affect it, it's okay. Just, tell me, like, although I was going through this challenge, I was able to, maintain my grades. And then if you were affected, talk about how maybe that affected you and how you're currently trying to overcome that, or you already did. So talk about the steps, talk about that challenge. Don't be humble. This is an opportunity for us to get to know you on a deeper personal level. Number 6, academic subject. Think about an academic subject that inspires you. Describe how you have furthered this interest inside or outside of the classroom. So for this one, pretty straightforward. Go ahead and circle academic subject. What is that subject that you really enjoy? Do you really like chemistry because you like to mix chemicals and you like to see the reaction? Do you really like biology because you like neurons and synapses? Maybe you went and did you know, a STEM program at UCLA over the summer, and you fell in love with STEM and now you want to pursue that, right? Maybe you went and did a dance program over at UCI, you fell in love with body movement, now you want to study kinesiology. So what are those connections that you're making? What is that subject? It doesn't always have to be a subject that you've enjoyed. It can be, and it doesn't have to be always be a subject that you were always good at. So, you know, maybe your freshman year, you were really bad at math, or your math teacher told you were really bad at math, but now maybe your 11th grade year, you finally got a teacher that really breaks down math for you and has made you fall in love with it, right? So what is that subject? Talk about it, and talk about it whether you've just enjoyed it in the classroom or there's been opportunity for you to further explore it outside of the classroom. Number 7, what have you done to make your school or community a better place? And for this, you can write the word service, because this is asking about essentially community service. So, you know, was there something going on at your school that you want to make a difference, and, you know, you did some sort of service work at your school to make that change? Maybe you just volunteered throughout your community, you know, to make your community be a better place. You could be doing it at an animal shelter, a homeless shelter, within your church. Maybe you're in a youth group. I know that for one of my students, he talked about how he thought that his mascot didn't necessarily represent the school or what the school stood for. So he went around, got people to sign a petition, you know, all the students signed the petition, asked his dad to come with him to talk to the principal about this, showed the petition, showed, you know, maybe why the mascot like didn't necessarily represent the student body, and then they moved it up to the district level to get the mascot changed, right? So it started somewhere small and went up the ladder of command. That was something that he did for his school. I've had students talk about, you know, going to soup kitchens and helping serve food there. The one thing about this is you don't want to focus on the small tasks. So don't be like, oh, I worked at a soup kitchen over Thanksgiving break. I poured soup in the bowl. I put a spoon in the bowl and I gave it to the homeless man. Like, yes, that is what a soup kitchen is. You help feed the homeless. But rather, like, what were the things that you learned from this experience, right? Maybe what was that personal connection? Maybe at some point in time, you were on the verge of being homeless or didn't know when your next meal was going to be. So now you wanted to give back because you want to make sure that other people don't feel that way ever again, right? So make sure you talk about the bigger picture. Maybe you learned how to communicate better. Maybe you learned patience, right? So what were those skills that you learned through this service? I know that some of you are in like Key Club, you know, or other clubs that do small community service things, but you want to talk about the one that was most significant or the one that you committed the most hours to. Again, if you can't talk about it, don't write about it. One time I had a student come in, worked on their UC application, and in an hour they were like, hey, I'm done, I'm gonna submit. And I was like, okay, do you mind if I review it real quick? You know, just wanna make sure everything's good to go. For this question, the answer that the student gave was literally the word nothing. Like out of their 350 words, they decided to just use one and say nothing. And I was like, why did you write the word nothing? And they're like, well, I haven't done anything. And I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine, right? But there are 7 other questions for you to go back and answer. So if you haven't done community service or you don't feel like yours has been significant or impactful in that way, don't force yourself to write something that's not gonna come out natural. And then last but not least, number 8, beyond what has already been shared in your application, what do you believe makes you stand out as a strong candidate for admissions to the University of California? So for this one, you can go ahead and write the word open-ended, just because all the other questions are more specific, right? So you have leadership, creative, academic subject, personal challenge, where this one is just broad and open-ended. So this is the time where you get to brag, not necessarily just like listing like why you're so great, but really going into depth, what makes you different from everyone else? Why do you feel that you belong at the UCs? Why do you think you deserve a seat over someone else, right? So like I said, go through every single year, go and reflect and make a list of all the things that you have done so that when you get to these questions, you can answer them. This is essentially the question we tell students to answer last if they can't answer any of the other 7, just because, like I said, the other 7 are more specific. But if you feel you already answered 3 out of the other 7 and this one's really calling your name, go ahead and answer it. But again, make sure you do that reflection piece before you get to this question. So again, I want to see your thumbs up or your round of applauses. How many of you think you're going to answer question number 5, the personal challenge? So go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you're going to answer the personal challenge question. See some thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. Go ahead and give me a round of applause if you're going to answer the academic subject. Okay, I see some round of applauses in there. What about number 7 for service? Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Okay, I see some thumbs up in there. And then number 8, the open-ended question. Go ahead and give me a round of applause. Okay, cool. So it's a really good mix of all of you answering the questions. Like I said, there is not one that we're looking for over the other. It's really up to you. And so choose the 4 that give you the opportunity to share your accomplishments beyond the minimum requirements. So remember, I showed you the 14 factors. Those are all things that essentially we look for on the application that are maybe like more number-like, more concrete. But the personal insight questions is the last opportunity for you to really bump up your application. So your personal insight questions can't necessarily hurt you. They will only benefit you. So make sure you take advantage of this. And I'm going to give you tips on how to make sure you take advantage of this opportunity. Again, talk about why that experience was significant to you. Why did you connect to it? Again, were you at some point, you know, for the service one, at some point, were you close to that? Did you have the greatest impact on, did it have the greatest impact on you? So again, why is this experience significant to you? And maybe before you even begin to write the personal insight questions, answer these questions right here so that you can really reflect and get the details on them before you, you turn them in to get them read. So some common mistakes that we see from students that they write an essay. I know that some students will just start writing and go on and go on, go over the 350 word limit, get to 500, and then they'll be like, okay, I'll start cutting from here. But really you want to get to the 350 point and just stop there and then go back and revise what you have. So remember, you're not writing an essay, you're just writing a response. The next thing is acronyms. What we might know as ETS, someone might know as something else. What we might know as EAOP, you know, maybe that's an acronym for something else. So when you're writing, don't write acronyms in your personal insight questions. Go ahead and write them all out, just because you never know who's reading your application. It could be someone that's not from the local area, which is probably more likely. So you want to make sure that they're able to decipher what it is you're trying to say. Stay away from quotations and dialogue. You're already very limited on the number of words that you can use, right? So the 350. So you want to make sure you stick to your words as much as possible. So no quotations from Frida, no quotations from Abraham Lincoln, Kanye, nothing like that. You want to stick to your own words. The next is storytelling. So excessive background, flowery language. Get straight to the point. Like I said, you only have 350 words, so you know, don't tell me you were born on a warm sunny day, the birds were in the trees, the squirrels were, you know, doing their thing. Just get straight to the point. What is it that you're trying to tell me? How did you get there? What did you learn? What was the outcome? Creative writing, poems and cliches. I know that some of you are really good with words, but again, get straight to the point. This is not the opportunity for you to get creative. Maybe on your private school college applications, you'll have the opportunity to get a little more creative. I know that those questions tend to ask for things like that, but the PIQs are not the opportunity for you to do that. Also, the use of, make sure you aren't using inappropriate humor or language. Some of you may be funny in person, but sometimes when you to it in writing, it might translate into being inappropriate or rude, or it might be offensive. So just make sure you're aware of your writing. Also, stick generalities. You want to make sure you stick to facts and personal examples. You never want to generalize like a whole population of people. So stick to you and what you know. What I mean by that is I have a really bad example. And I just share it because I know I've seen this in some students' writing, so just to stay away from it. You never want to, you know, be like, oh, all Latinx people are XYZ, or all, you know, maybe because you identify as Latinx, or if you are a part of, you know, the LGBT community, you never want to be like, all LGBT people are XYZ, because maybe that might be true for you, but it might not be true for others. So again, don't generalize, stick to the facts and personal examples. Repetition, give us new information that we can't find in other sections of the application. Every single response should be a different example. So I should be able to know 4 new things about you that maybe already weren't in your application, or maybe you're elaborating a little bit more in the personal insight. So 4 new examples for every single response is a new example. And then asking philosophical questions, get to the point and tell us what you mean. Students, I don't know, like to get philosophical in PIQs. I know for the academic subject one, students will be like, what is an academic subject? What does favorite mean? And I'm like, why are you asking rhetorical questions, right? So get to the point, let us know what it is you're trying to say. Writing tips. I can't stress enough how important it is to start early. The earlier you start, the more individualized help you're gonna have, right? Just because everyone else is gonna wait till later on in the year once like the deadline starts approaching. So start as early as you possibly can. Take advantage of Jamie and KT so that they can read your questions. You're gonna write these questions once, they're not gonna be perfect. You're gonna write them twice, they're still not gonna be perfect. And maybe finally by the 3rd or the 4th time, you're gonna have something solid and concrete ready to go. So start these questions now. And I'm not saying, you know, like after this presentation, go and, you know, write all 4 of them and get them turned in, but, you know, start reflecting, doing the reflection, and maybe you write 1 PIQ every single week, you know, for the next week. And then you turn them in as you get them so that you can get those revised. So I'm not saying, you know, turn all 4 in at the same time, but start writing them down so that you at least have something going in order for you to turn in. You want to make sure you use I statements. Again, don't generalize. Proofread and edit. I know that for the PIQs, we don't necessarily look at grammar, but it is nice when, you know, your PIQ has like a nice flow and it actually makes sense. So make sure you proof and edit it. You can always use Grammarly. It's a free tool that will check your grammar. Solicit feedback. So you have people already as part of this program that are going to be able to give you feedback. Take advantage of them. I say copy and paste just because you want to make sure you're never writing your PIQs on the actual application. I recommend doing on a Word document, a Google Doc, and then that way you can share it with the people who are giving you feedback. And that's just one of the easiest methods, I think, to do. And lastly is relax. I know that right now things are changing every single day, right? Especially with COVID. You know, one day you think you're going to school, the next day it's all virtual, then you're on a hybrid model. And so everything is changing every single day. And I understand that. But I still want you to be able to take care of yourself first and foremost before you start worrying about everything else, right? Because if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of all of the other things. So try to breathe, relax. If it's already getting too overwhelming, take a day off, right? You're all allowed, you know, a day, a week off, how much ever time you need, and then come back with that, you know, clear mind, ready to go mindset, and get this done as early as possible. The earlier you start, the less stress it's going to be for you later on. And I say that because not only are you going to have the UC application, but if you're applying to the CSUs, if you're applying to private schools, scholarships, financial aid, like all of those things are going to come in the fall. So start as early as you possibly can to avoid waiting till the end until everything adds up. Things for you to keep in mind is that, again, all questions have equal value. So it's not like we're looking for one over the other. That you have the 350 word max response. This is not an essay. Like I said, grammar is not part of our review. So there's nothing that you have to worry about that. This is the very important part. So the additional comments section. I know that some of you probably have COVID related like questions, so hopefully I can address it here. But there are 2 additional comments section within the UC application. One is within the academic history part of it, and then the second part of that is right behind the personal insight questions. So within both of these additional comments section, you'll be able to talk about 2 different things. So in these sections, you'll be able to add a little bit more. You're not necessarily answering like a 5th PIQ, but just giving us more insight as to maybe what was going in your life, or, you know, maybe you need to explain a grade, why you received this grade. This is going to be the opportunity for you to do that. So in the additional comments section within the academic history, so right after you input all of your grades, there's going to be an academic history additional comments box. And in this, you'll be able to talk about anything academic related. So if, because you went on the virtual world, right, due to COVID, if your grades got affected in some significant way, go ahead and talk about that, right? Maybe you didn't have the right resources. Maybe you didn't have Wi-Fi. Maybe you didn't have a laptop. You know, so all those things could be things that like added to your academic history changing, and maybe it doesn't reflect as the person that you are. Maybe you were taking AP courses all for semester, and then you changed to, you know, just regular college prep courses because something was happening, right? Maybe you had to start working and you knew that you weren't going to be able to handle AP and work at the same time, especially on top of COVID, right? So talk about that within this additional comments section. Maybe, you know, first semester of freshman year, you got all A's, and then as you were moving on to sophomore year, you started getting some bad grades, right? Or grades that don't reflect the person that you are. So talk about that. I know that I'll see that in transcripts sometimes where, you know, freshman and sophomore year students had all A's, it was perfect, and then junior year, you know, they started getting like C's, D's, and F's, and you're like, that's weird. Something must have happened for the student to just change like that, right? So that's the opportunity for you to talk about that. So you can share anything about your academic record that you have not covered in your application. So again, COVID related things you don't necessarily want to talk about in the PIQ questions. If you want to talk about COVID related things, anything that has to do with school, your academic history, anything like that, you'll talk about in the additional comments section within the academic history part. If you want to talk about how COVID impacted your family, you know, financially, or anything else otherwise, you would talk about that in the additional comments section under the PIQ section. So within this one, you can go ahead and talk about, I'm not going to say write like a 5th personal insight question, but essentially like go ahead and talk about how COVID impacted your family, right? And what I tell you right now might be true right now, but like I said, things are changing on the daily. So if for some reason these change and maybe the UCs decide to add an actual COVID box where you can just talk about anything COVID related, I'll be sure to let everyone know so that you can get updated on that. But as of right now, in the additional comments section under the PIQ, you want to make sure you talk about, if you have to talk about COVID, right, or you want to talk about COVID, this is the opportunity for you to go and explain that. If you don't have anything COVID related that you don't want to talk about, then you can use this to further tell us maybe how you showed leadership on a team as a co-captain, right? Maybe that you saved money from your job and you're going to use that money to pay for school. So if it's something that you didn't already get to talk about in the PIQs, you can go ahead and talk about it in the additional comments section. One tip is that I know that if you're applying to Berkeley, Berkeley loves to see something in the additional comments section. So I'm not saying essentially write a 5th PIQ, but yes, you want to write something substantial in the additional comments section. And just so you all know, anything that you write on your UC application, regardless of where it goes, as readers, it has to be read by all of the readers. So take advantage of it. This is your one opportunity. I know that COVID significantly impacted a lot of you, and this is where you want to go ahead and talk about that. The other thing I want to address is changes to the UC application for fall of 2021. There have been some small changes to it. one of the most significant ones is the test scores, and I'll go into more depth about that. But the first thing is the name. The UC application has now added that you can provide your preferred or lived name. So a preferred name is the name that the applicant wishes to be known by or identified that is different from their legal name. So this is a really big win for maybe the LGBTQ community, right? That want to be maybe non-binary or transgender students, things like that. You can go ahead and now provide your preferred or your lived name. The next thing that changed was academic history. So because of COVID, the UC is going to allow pass or no pass / credit grades for any A through G courses that were impacted during winter, spring, and summer of 2020. Like I said, every single day is changing. I recognize that a lot of you will be still doing school virtually in the fall. Will the UCs change the pass, no pass to continue on to the next school year? I'm not 100% sure yet. For now, all I know is that we're only accepting the pass, no pass grades for winter, spring, and summer of 2020. As for the activities and awards section, the change there was that the character count has been reduced. So last year, when you had to describe like descriptions of programs or, you know, the activities that you were talking about, the character count was 500, characters. I think that the UCs realized that that was too much, and it took a lot more time for them to review it. So it has been reduced down to 350 characters. And then the character count for like if you worked or organization descriptions, that went down from the 500 to 250. So good news for you, less words. But again, this means that you now have to be more solid and concrete about your responses from what it is that you're actually trying to say in the awards and activities section. The next thing is the test scores. So as you all may or may not know, the ACT and the SAT are now optional for fall of 2021, and official score reports are not necessary. So it's optional, it's not required, and I'm gonna tell you why we strongly still recommend it in the next slide, but just so you all know, it is optional. And then writing scores, you don't have to take it, so you don't have to do the ACT writing or the SAT essay portion anymore. We're not being asked for you to report that anymore. So first I want to cover the activities and awards. So on this is the picture on the left is exactly what it looks like on the UC application. You can talk about awards or honors. You can talk about educational preparation programs, extracurricular activities, other coursework than A through G that you took, volunteering or community service, and then work experience. So within the application, you'll get to select which activity or award you essentially want to talk about, right? So here are the categories, you get to select them. There is no limit per category, so you can, talk about as many as you want. The one thing I want you to remember though is quality versus quantity. So just because you add 20 things on there, doesn't mean they were like 20 solid things, right? There could be a student who turns in 20 items on their activities and award versus a student who only did 5, but the 5 that the student submitted were solid, right? It gave me a good idea of who the student was. They were able to elaborate on what it is that they were doing, what they learned, etc. Versus the 20 who just wanted to be like, oh, I want to show that I did all these things, but wasn't really able to talk about what they learned, what were the outcome of those things. So remember, quality versus quantity. In these things, again, you don't want to include acronyms. So if you're going to talk about your outreach programs, go ahead and spell them out. Same things with like awards or anything like that, try to spell them out. If you weren't involved, that's totally understandable. Again, there's the traditional roles and non-traditional roles. So if you had to, to do things at home that took up the time where you could have been doing these things, that's totally understandable. So, talk about why you weren't involved in one of your PIQs, or talk about why you weren't involved in the additional comments section after the PIQs. So again, this is an opportunity for you to tell us. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what this looks like. This is the activities and awards section. Again, this is exactly what it looks like on the UC application. And just so that you want to know, on the right side, this is what it's going to look like in terms of the tabs that you're going to go through. So all of the sections, everything that I mentioned is going to be on the right side. So you'll be able to flip through them. The next part that I think a lot of students have questions on is the changes to standardized testing. So like I said, you are test optional. It's optional if you want to take the SAT or the ACT, but it is strongly recommended that you still take it. And the reason why I say that is that depending on maybe what major you're going into, right? So maybe if you're doing more competitive majors like nursing or engineering, they might use your test score as a way to kind of review applications. They might use it for scholarship opportunities, for post-enrollment course placement. So, you know, if you need to be placed in English or math, they might use your score in order to place you. And then statewide eligibility for admissions guarantee. So it's optional. If you have the opportunity to take it, if you get the fee waiver, still take it. Don't focus so much on what your score was. Just take the test so that you're still able to qualify for all of these things. But you won't be penalized in admissions if you don't submit an SAT or ACT score. So if you already took it once, that's perfectly fine. Submit that one score. If you know that during your senior year you have an opportunity to take it again, go ahead and do it. But it's not required. And then, like I said, you no longer have to submit a score for the SAT, essay, or ACT writing test.
Paula, we have a couple questions with the SAT and ACT. So a couple of the students are wondering, what if they don't get the opportunity to take either test, either next year or even now, just because so many of the tests are being canceled?
Yeah, and like I said, that's one of the things that we're going to take into consideration too. Like us as the UCs, we recognize that right now, you know, a lot of the tests are being shut down. So like I said, don't worry about it. If you don't have the opportunity to take it, you know, obviously don't take it. But if the opportunity does come up, go ahead and take the test. So don't stress, like I said, don't stress on the SAT. You're not going to be penalized on it in terms of admissions.
And then we have another question. So you did mention that the SAT and ACT writing is no longer required, but is this just for the class of 2021, or is it a new policy that's moving forward for all grade levels?
So I know that for right now, it's not required for class of 21 and 2022. I know that the UCs are coming up with a new test that's going to be, you know, that's going to be able to determine. But as of right now, I know it's for 2021, 2022.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
We have a handful of questions, but I'll save those to the end. Those are the ones that were related. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, good thing, because we are at the questions part.
Okay, so I don't know if we want to do the questions or if we want to actually introduce Katie and Jamie really quick before we get to the questions.
Let's introduce them first, and then we can answer all the questions.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Can everyone hear me? Are we good?
Yes.
Hi. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. And let's see here. Shall we go to presentation? Shall I start that? I think sharing our screen here. So thank you for joining us all today. This is a really good time, right, to take a quick stretch break, right? Stand up, turn around. I know you've been sitting here for a minute. But anyway, like I said, let me minimize this and then put it on presentation mode. And so I am KT, and just to tell you a little bit about me, I've taught everything from preschool through college. So I'm a current college instructor. I've worked as a tutor in the writing center. Also, I teach currently mostly writing. So I'm mostly looking at or working with freshman writers. I teach both in Chicano Latino Studies and the English department. I also teach adults who are returning back to college after a big break. And I've been the writing specialist for ETS now for 6 years. Plus I've gotten all 4 of my kids into college, or helped get them in, right, as writing. So I hope you feel like you're in good hands with myself and Jamie. So I'm gonna let Jamie introduce herself right now.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Okay. I'm the other writing specialist. My name is Jamie Bueller, and I've been doing this for ETS. I think this is my 3rd year. I'm also a college professor. We teach, both KT and I, we teach at Cal State Long Beach. And I also teach at the community college level. I teach at Golden West College in Huntington Beach, and we are so excited to help you. And so I hope you will get some helpful info out of this presentation.
Yes, super excited. Our goal is to get you into the UC. Okay, so, oh, let's see here. Here we go. Okay, so really important. Paola asked you earlier to be writing things down. I think that's a really good start and really good prep for college, right? UC is all about writing down your notes, not just taking screenshots of the board. You're going to learn that there's a huge difference between college and high school learning. So we want you to email us often with your PIQs, and we've got a few tips for how to make that process really easy, both for us and for yourself. So when you email us, and eventually you will get the email address where to submit those, right? Your instructors will, ETS advisors will give you that info. But when you email us, please, please, please put on a subject line. I have a girlfriend who's a fantastic writer and she can never think of a subject line. So we're gonna tell you exactly what to put there. Is your name, and then tell us which draft you're submitting, because like Paola said, hopefully you're gonna get 2, 3, 4 drafts, whatever it takes. I'll tell you, good writing, strong writing, and this is the writing of your life, right? You're writing to get yourself into these UCs. Takes time and it takes revision. So just put your name and the draft number that you're submitting to us, that'll help. And then in the message, if you could tell us the school you're coming from, that you're affiliated with, and your intended major. Sometimes the intended major can help us decide on some strategies to give you when revising. Okay. So really important though, that you send us either a Google Doc or a Word doc. Cannot comment on PDFs, right? There's no way for us to mark it up and give you feedback. And just to put your mind at ease, if you send us a Google Doc or a Word doc, we're gonna make a copy of it so you never have to worry that your original, right, is gone away. Jamie and I will always make a copy and then send you back that copy with the feedback on it. Okay, hopefully I didn't go too fast, just name and subject, and then making sure that you link a Google Doc or a Word doc. So I'm gonna go on to the next slide. Well, oh, there we go. Okay, so content. We're gonna ask that you really try to do your 4 PIQs, you know, all of your personal interest questions, but especially if you're starting early and you just have one that you really want us to take a look at, you know, this week, tomorrow, whatever it is, that's fine. Especially as we get closer to the deadline though, we really want you to have all 4 of those PIQs, even if it's, this is what I want to talk about, but I don't know what to say, because then at least we can give you some direction on brainstorming that question. And it's really important that you please submit them all in one document. Our inbox gets really crazy, really nutty, and we will always figure it out, but we will ask you to resubmit if you don't have all 4 PIQs in one doc, okay? And really important is when you share the doc, especially if you're just sharing a link and not a Word doc, that you put your settings on anyone with the link can view. Again, we'll make a copy, but if we can't look at it, then it just takes us, or if we can't view it, then it just takes us extra time back and forth asking you, please share it, you know, the right way. So we want to save that time for you and for us. Okay. And then, let's see. Okay, so receiving feedback. We will always send you a confirmation email within 1 to 2 days of receiving your PIQs. That's, I'm checking the inbox constantly, and we'll just let you know, hey, great job, we received it. If we need something else, we'll let you usually know at that time too. And then we're going to ask you, just please be patient with us. We're not robots. We are human readers, but we are working, you know, really diligently to get you that feedback as soon as possible, especially so that you can revise it and submit it back to us for a second or hopefully 3rd or 4th reading. Unfortunately, a lot of students wait till the week before the deadline. I won't lie, we usually get a third of y'all who are sending us a week before the deadline. And at that point, we're lucky enough just to get one revision or one set of comments to you. So if you want us to look at it often, please send it early as possible. Again, even if you only have 2 or 3 PIQs, the more the better, but send what you have and we'll continue to help you out along the way. Okay, and again, so just please be patient with us. And then if you're worried, like, oh, you know, it's been a week, it's been, you know, 10 days, then just tell us again, and we're happy to let you know where we are. You know, all depends on how many essays we have to look at at one time. Okay, so I think Jamie's gonna do the next slide. Yeah, so
yeah. All right, so we're actually gonna show you guys a sample doc of what you will get when you get feedback from us. But before we show you that, we just wanted to make pretty clear what our goals were for our feedback to you so that you could move forward in the process. It can be really a difficult thing to get feedback from people. You know, it's a hard thing to take criticism, but it's coming from a good place. You know, we want to get you into the UC of your dreams. So we are going to give you honest feedback. We're going to give you experienced advice. We're going to encourage you. We're going to ask questions. We're not going to edit every line and change the voice so that it sounds like me talking. Like, we're not going to touch that. That's all you. But we're going to do our best to help you move forward and just elaborate on what's already there. So KT, do you want to go to the next slide, and then we could talk about the process of receiving the feedback from us. We're going to show you right now what a sample doc will look like. So you guys are going to get a Google Doc back from us where we've copied over your work and we've put it over into a new doc, and then we're going to put our comments in it, both throughout the doc, but then also in the margins. So I wanted to show you guys, this is just a little sample that we have here. The first thing that I want you guys to see is that there's more than one PIQ on the doc itself. So we want all 4 of them there, as KT was saying. But you'll also notice how helpful it is for us that this student has put the questions. They've, you know, copied and pasted that in, so we don't have to keep looking, you know, which PIQ is number 4 again, right? They've got their name, the school, the major, and then also the questions and then their response for each one. So a couple of things you'll also want to notice here is that you've got a share button on the top right? That's how you're going to adjust your own privacy settings, and that's how we're going to make sure we can share this doc with you. We want you to be able to see our comments. So in order to do that, we're going to change the link setting to be anyone with the link can edit it. When it's set at that setting, you'll be able to see the comments in the margins. And so what you guys will notice here is that you can scroll through and then you can see the little highlights in yellow. That'll have a little comment next to it on the side. And so you can read the questions that we're posing. And so really, like, we're focusing on what Paula is talking about, which is, do you have your details? And then do you have your reflection at the end? You'll also notice, you know, we'll talk about things like, hey, you still have word count. Let's elaborate on this part. Or you missed this part of the question. Let's make sure you answer that. In this particular example, it reminds me of one of the questions that's been posed in our Zoom group chat. The student was talking about band in about 3 of these questions. And on the 3rd PIQ in here, I ended up posing this question, you know, this is your 3rd band related PIQ. Is this going to be too much repetition? Is there a different way you can answer this question? So we're just basically trying to comment on all these things Paula is talking about, and we're not changing too much of your voice or your grammar or your sentence structure, right? We're in the margins really answering your questions and elaborating. So when you get a doc like this, make sure you read every comment we make. Consider very closely and carefully if you want to implement that advice. And then once you make that decision and if you make those changes, you see those little check marks by the comments, you could just click that and the comment will disappear and you'll resolve that comment. So it's up to you how you want to use this doc, but this is how we're going to get our information back to you. Yeah, KT, I think I'm okay with that doc.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, just a couple more things on this. If you want to just keep it there for a moment, if you look at the bottom bullet point, it says that to really use a computer when you're getting the feedback from us, it's nearly impossible, right, to be able to navigate all of that on the phone. So just make sure whenever you're pulling up the doc with our comments, you're using the computer. And then remember, if you start early, you can get as much feedback from us as you want. So that'd be really cool. All right, KT, back to you.
Okay. Good. I hope that was helpful. We are here again to help you through the process. You know, if you send us something and we can't get into it, we'll send you an email and say, hey, send it to us this way. But really, I just want to follow up on what Paola said. You're not doing a storytelling per se, but this is the absolute okay time to brag about yourself, right? After all, you're trying to get, like Jamie said, into that UC of your dreams. So brag about yourself and give them enough details about yourself. If you just say it was really hard last semester because my dad lost his job, well, that's a good start. But go on of, oh my gosh, I live in a 2-bedroom home with 8 siblings, right? Or whatever your case may be, because you want those UC readers to see you. You want them to have an image in their head of you and your personality and really what you're going through. So you don't need to write about the wind in the trees, right? But definitely when you're talking about your talents, give those details that are going to help them see that you're a really great organizer. So lots of rich, vivid imagery that relates to you, your struggles, your personality, your talents, you know, and how wonderful you are. So you're trying to stand out above everyone else who's also trying to get into the UC. And so our last tip is just submit early and submit often, because that's the best way that we can help you. Okay.
And then Katie and Jamie, even Paola, if you guys have an answer for this. So when students are submitting these ETS responses, for Katie and Jamie, are there any limits to confidentiality based on what they submit? And then Paola, is there any limits as far as when they submit their UC application?
So that's a really great question, and I'm happy to field it unless maybe Loretta or somebody else wants to. But with regard to confidentiality, we do need to, we are mandated reporters, right? Anyone you work with ETS, excuse me, Jamie, myself, right? All of your counselors and advisors, they're all, again, what's called mandated reporters. And that means if we have even an inkling that you may be in danger, or that you may be of harm to yourself or others, we do need to report it. Jamie and I would report it to our supervisor, Loretta, and then she would probably contact your counselor. So while there are certainly struggles in your life that could help your essays, you have to be very careful and sensitive about the information that you're putting out there and how you are framing it, right? It can be wonderful talking about how you overcame something very traumatic, but we also want to make sure that you're safe. That is the first and foremost. So you will also want to remember that this is going to a UC reader, and how are they going to deal with the information? And we are and that's why it's really wonderful to have Jamie and I there as your first look, because we can help you reframe whatever it is that you put in that essay so that it does become strong, or maybe advise you, well, this doesn't really answer the question, so let's see if we can come up with an alternate. So I hope I answered that well enough. If anyone wants to elaborate.
I think the only thing I want to add is that if like, you know, the situation's crazy, like, and cops were already involved, or, you know, whoever had to like take care of that situation already took about it, it's like a case closed, but you still want to talk about it, you can talk about it. But if it's like something that's currently going on, then like Katie said, we have to report it as mandated reporters. So if it's something that's already been closed though, that it's been handled, I know that you can go ahead and talk about that experience. But like Katie said, you want to make sure you're careful with what you say if it has not been closed and it's an open case.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with some of the questions. We do have a handful. So if Paula can be highlighted again. Okay, thank you. So we'll get started with the first one. What if you're still going through the personal challenge and you want to talk about it? Any advice?
Yeah, so if you're still going through the challenge, definitely talk about it. Talk about what you've been currently like going through, whatever that challenge is. And maybe if you even have like first steps of how you're going to overcome it, or if you foresee this being like something long-term, go ahead and talk about that. But if this is something you're still going through, yeah, let us know, right? Especially like in this current situation, everything going on, go ahead and express that.
Okay, and then I think you touched on this in the presentation, but someone asked, would you recommend to use or stay away from quotes in my personal insight responses?
I would stay away from quotes. Use your own words as much as possible.
Okay, and then how early do you recommend that I start writing my PIQ responses, and how many drafts do you think I should do?
Early, like I said, I'm not saying for you after this, like, oh my God, I have to stay up till midnight and like write them. But what day is it? It's Wednesday. Maybe by the end of maybe next week, right? You take all this information, you reflect on it, you do the reflection that I said, you go home, you look at your transcripts, you look at what you did in terms of community service, and you do the reflection piece. Then maybe next week you decide on one PIQ that you think really resonates with you, and you start working on that. You work on it for a week, and then maybe you submit that. But I say right now, while you aren't in school, take advantage of all the time that you have to really work on those PIQs. If you can get in like all 4 of them, just a rough draft to the readers before school even starts, kudos to you, because you're already like way ahead of everyone else. And I promise you that you are way ahead of everyone else. But take advantage of them now, because like we said, everyone waits till the very end. If you wait till the very end, it's not just like the, 70 students that are on this call that are going to submit. It's going to be all the other ones who aren't on the call right now submitting. So get more of that individualized help now while you can.
And then for the ETS students that are on this session right now, we do want to let you know that Katie and Jamie, the ETS readers, are available now. So your ETS advisor will be sending you a flyer with information on how to contact them if you do get started on any of those drafts. And then let's see, do you see admission readers judge on grammar and language mistakes in your personal insight question responses?
No, grammar isn't part of our review. But like I said, if it has a nice flow, like grammar looks good, it's easier to read, but we're not gonna, like take points off for not having a correct grammar. But that's also why you have Jamie and KT to review and give you feedback to make sure that you have good grammar and good flow.
And then we have, who else should I ask to read my PIQs for edits, and how many different people should read them?
One thing I like to say is make sure you limit how many people read them, right? Once you start getting anywhere from 3 to 4 people reading your PIQs, maybe what you first started off with completely changes. And like Jamie and Katie said, you don't always have to take the feedback. It's just like something that they're providing you with. But if you wanted to, they could give you 20 comments and you could decline all 20 comments because that's just like not what you wanted to say. So remember, at the end of the day, these are your PIQs. Stick with what you kind of already said. Take some of that feedback into consideration. They're only trying to help you. But once you start getting like 3, 4 people to read it, what you maybe started off with changes into something else. And you want to make sure you stick to you and, being as original as possible.
And then can I say that my greatest skill is time management?
This one's, I struggle with this question a lot. If you have like absolutely no other skill that you can think of, right? You can go ahead and talk about it, but you want to give me a visual in your writing as much as possible, right? So if you're going to tell me that time management is your greatest skill and you absolutely have nothing else that you can talk about, and maybe that's why you need the reflection piece, right? To go through every single day and think about reflection. and maybe even talking to someone, right, to pick your brain to see that maybe you do have a skill, you just haven't like recognized it as a skill. You can talk about time management, but you want to give me that visual in my head, right? So if you're taking, 6 AP courses, you're volunteering, you're also working 20 hours a week, you're taking your siblings to school, I don't know. You want to make sure you talk about that in that way and what you have learned from this and maybe how you'll implement this skill in college. So you want to make sure you give us like that overall view of what time management looks like for you. Don't just tell me like, oh, well, I've been able to manage, working 10 hours a week and also playing 5 hours of video games. And I've been able to watch TV for 6 hours a week. And I'm really good at managing my time, right? You want to give me that visual of how you're going to take those skills onto college.
And then can I recycle some of the responses that I used for the PIQs for other applications? What do you recommend?
The PIQs are your starting point. So I think the PIQs do a good job of really making you reflect on everything that you've done. Every single question is so different. But all of these responses, you can recycle for scholarships. You can recycle for maybe other college essays, especially for the private schools. So the PIQs are only 350 words, right? The other scholarship essays might be 500, but now at least you have some starting point and now you can elaborate more. So definitely recycle these questions, use them as your starting point for scholarships, and I strongly encourage you to apply to scholarships as early as now as well.
And then let's see, if you notice other students in your school writing about the same experience that you've had, would you recommend writing about something different?
My answer is no, don't change. If that experience was significant to you, still talk about it, because the way I talk about my experience might be completely different from what you talk about it, and probably what you learned is completely different from what I learned. So talk about the same experience, but it's all about what you learned and what you got out of it. So don't take that away from yourself.
And then is there any particular order that responses should be in? For example, my first paragraph is describing the situation. Paragraph 2 is explaining how it impacted me. Paragraph 3 would explain how I'm responding to it and how it would benefit me in college. But overall, is just there a particular order that responses should be in?
Well, first and foremost, I'm hearing paragraphs. And like I said, this is not an essay, it's a response. So there shouldn't be paragraphs really. It should just be, like a solid response. 350 words is really not that much. So don't focus too much on like getting into this nitty gritty. It's not an essay. Again, your rough draft should just be like, you should just start writing, right? Just start writing, think of what it is that you're thinking about. Go back, look at it maybe like another day, revise it. And then if you think it's pretty solid, send it to Katie and Jamie to look at, and they can probably give you some really good feedback. But it's that initial part that's difficult for students. So don't overthink the rough draft. Just start writing something on paper, and you'll get there. And when it's ready and concrete, you'll know, because you'll just know when it's ready. And I'm sure Katie and Jamie will tell you that you're solid. So don't focus too much on paragraphs. Just start writing.
And then what if my English teacher makes this an assignment and asks me for an essay? What would you recommend, since I know this is not an essay?
Yeah, English teachers need training on PIQs. That's my first thing. The second thing is that what your teachers want is an assignment. What the PIQs want is for you to get personal and get straight to the point. So you might have to write some sort of assignment, essay, reflection for your English teacher, and then you can go ahead and maybe edit or take what you actually want and you think is solid and concrete for the PIQs. But I know that a lot of English teachers tend to do this for the summer. They want you to do PIQs as one of the assignments. So just remember that what your teacher is looking for is completely different from what the UCs are actually looking for.
And then can editing videos of family or for a school project be a good skill to talk about in my PIQs?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're using, if your videos are being announced like on the school's websites, or, they're being shown as part of like the announcements, like that's definitely a skill. If you're going to take the skill and maybe like further develop it while you're in college, right? Maybe you want to major in something similar to that. go ahead and talk about it.
And then we have, I know you mentioned that each PIQ has to be a different part of your life, but what if there's a student whose greatest talent or skill is playing an instrument? This kind of goes back to what Jamie was talking about, but can I talk about band to answer more than one question? For example, leadership and educational opportunity. How can I prevent it from being repetitive?
So this is where you're going to have to really like think about and make sure that your responses aren't kind of saying the same things, right? If you're going to talk about the, the instrument being your greatest talent or skill, again, talk about that, how you built that up, the time that you dedicated. But if you're going to talk about band being maybe one of your leadership roles, you want to stick to the role as close as possible, different than like the talent or skill. So if, I don't know, I think in band you have like chair 1 or chair 2. I'm not very familiar with like the band terms, but I know like there's something like that. Then talk about maybe how you got the band together, how maybe there was a problem within the band team themselves and you help resolve that. Why were you chosen as, chair 1 versus chair 2? Things like that. So stick to that leadership aspect as much as possible and stick to the instrument being your talent and your skill separate from that leadership role.
Okay, and then any tips on getting started? I'm not used to bragging or talking about myself.
Oh, this is the start. This is great because this is exactly kind of how job interviews are. One of the very first questions is tell us about yourself. And I'm like, hi, I'm here. I'm looking for a job. I don't know what else you want to know, But really just, like I said, go back and reflect. Go through every single year to see what it is that you did. Think about the questions and maybe why they're important to you, why you think, oh, when she was talking about academic subject, like I was like, oh my God, I really like English, Why did that really draw your attention? So just start free writing. Free write, like I said, go back and look at it another day, see how you can maybe change things a little bit, how you can improve it, and then go from there. Doing the PIQs isn't a do it one time and it's a perfect process. It's really like you're going to write them once. They're not going to be good, and I promise you they're not going to be good. You're going to write them twice. They're still probably not going to be good, and maybe finally by the third, fourth time that KT and Jamie give you feedback, you're going to have something solid. So just be patient. I like the saying of you're flying the plane as you're building it, and that's exactly kind of what's going on with PIQs. So trust the process.
When is the deadline for these questions?
So the UC application opens August 1st. So that is, I think, before everyone goes back to school. So if you really want to be ahead of the game, August 1st, go ahead and create a UC application account. Everyone has access to it. I think one of the later workshops that y'all are doing is a walkthrough of the UC application. I think that's on August 5th, so you'll have more than enough time. But create an account, go through it to see it is exactly what it's asking about. The first day that you can actually submit your application is November 1st. So you have from August 1st to November 1st to work on it. You could, if you really want to be ahead, you could finish all of it during that time, and by November 1st, just hit submit. The last day to submit your UC application is November 30th. So please don't begin on November 1st. Like I said, begin as early as possible, but November 30th is the deadline. Keep in mind that probably a week before that deadline is your Thanksgiving break. And guess what happens during break? People take vacation. Your ETS team is going to be having fun eating turkey and all delicious kinds of food. Your counselors are gone. Your teachers are gone. You're kind of on your own. So if you know you're going to wait until last minute, the last day to possibly submit, I always say, is the day before you go on to Thanksgiving break, because after that, you're kind of on your own. And as much as I say, like, I'm going to take the time during my vacation to help you, I also want you to respect my time just as much as we respected your time when you had all the time to get that help that you needed.
Okay, and then we have a couple of questions regarding AP, SAT, ACT, so I'm going to address those now. But do AP scores affect your college acceptance, or do they play an important role in our application?
So if you took AP courses, I hope that you took AP tests. Even if you didn't pass your test, I still would report your scores because we want to see that you challenged yourself. So if you're going to tell me you took, you know, like what is the point of you taking the AP class if you're not going to take the AP test? So we want to make sure that you still challenged yourself. Even if you didn't pass, we're going to see that and recognize that. So I'd rather see you submit your score than not submit your score just because you didn't pass it.
And then I know that the SATs are optional. However, you are encouraging students to submit their scores. Let's say I took my SAT during the school-wide exam in March and I did not take it seriously. I'm not happy with my scores. Do you recommend that I still report these scores? And do you recommend me retaking the SAT if I do have the opportunity?
I definitely recommend you retaking it if you have the opportunity. If you don't, if you are really super unsatisfied with your score, you know, you don't have to report it, but just remember that this could also take away from you hitting any scholarship opportunities if available. So just remember, to everything, there's like pros and cons. If you have the opportunity, retake it. If you really don't like your score, don't submit it. It's not part of admissions really. But if possible, I would still put it on there just because you don't want to limit yourself from any scholarship opportunities.
And then even if they have a low score, what do admissions readers think about that? Does it still highlight the fact that they took the exam, or does it just show them that they did not score well?
I think that's a difficult question right now because of everything that's going on, you know, with COVID, obviously your junior year, you know, you didn't think, well, no one knew COVID was coming. So yeah, maybe you didn't take the test seriously. It's really up to you. I can't tell you that there's a score that we're looking for in terms of admissions. I can only tell you like average test scores that have, you know, that the freshman class had previously. But that really means nothing because again, there are 14 factors that we are looking at when we are admitting students. So don't focus too much on the score. That was one of the 14 factors. There are, you know, 13 others that we're looking at. So don't get so caught up on the score. If you feel comfortable submitting what you got, submit it. If you don't, then then you don't have to. And like I said, it's not part of the admissions process. So this is kind of like the 1 year, you don't have to necessarily worry about that.
And then we have a question asking, what do you mean the SAT can help open scholarship opportunities?
So in the, I don't know if my presentation is still up, but in the slide that I had mentioned about SATs, it's not going to be used for admissions, but some campuses might use it in terms of scholarship opportunities. So on the UC application, aside from you just like giving them all your academic history, there's going to be a part where you get to select like 16 things that maybe you relate to personally, like being Latinx, being African American, things like that. You know, maybe your dad, you know, is a police officer, things like that. And you'll get to select up to 16 options. And then if you maybe already qualify for any of the scholarships, they might just award you scholarships, or they'll recommend and invite you to apply to these scholarships so that you can get the money. So some campuses might use your test scores in order to, you know, let you know about scholarship opportunities.
And then with, let's see, admission readers, how are we competing? Are we competing against everyone applying in our school, city, state? What do admissions readers look at when they're looking at these 14 factors?
So that's a really great question, and I'm actually really glad someone asked. You're just competing against everyone in your school. And I say that because it wouldn't be fair for me to compare a student at Newport Harbor against a student in my hometown, which is super rural, called Yuba City. So we want to make sure that we're comparing everyone equally, right? So if the school had 14 AP courses, I can't compare that school to a school that only had 5. There's obviously some sort of disadvantage between one or the other. So just worry about everyone in your school and like within your local area.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we had throughout the chat. If I missed your question, please re-add it in the chat now, but I think we've covered everything. Someone did ask if you know of any credible scholarship websites.
So
And
I
we
can
can
see some
link you
other
to that.
things in the chat. One of the things was like, oh, what if I haven't done community service because of at-stay-home orders? There is this website called volunteermatch.org. I'll put it in the chat. But on there, they're offering virtual opportunities for you to get involved. I think some of them are just teaching people how to read, how to write, really like easy things. So the website's on there, volunteer.org. The other website that I want to recommend was udemy.com. On this website, they typically have a lot of free courses to further improve your skills or further develop them. So if you know you like photography, they have like a photography for beginners or intermediate, masters. Same with like learning how to work Excel or Outlook, Microsoft, PowerPoint. If you're a creator, if you're a creator and you really videos, there might be a video on there for you to learn how to do that, right? Even making TikToks. I don't know if y'all have looked at TikTok, but some of those TikToks, you need to have skill to do those. So even things like that. So go on Udemy. I'll type it in the chat. A lot of them are free. Sometimes it costs.
What kind of TikToks do you do?
Udemy.com. So just make sure you're aware of that. What was the other question?
And then let's see. I'm trying to find it. Got lost in the chat. So I know you said volunteermatch.org. I also am adding to the chat an Instagram post that ETS created that has a couple of virtual extracurricular options as well. So you guys can find that in the chat box. And then let's see. Someone did mention when they should start writing the PIQs. I think what they mean is what school year. So this is meant for students who are seniors and they're applying for admission to the UC.
Yes.
See, and then
scholarships, I can send Loretta 2 like packets of scholarships that I have for y'all to kind of send out as PDFs and y'all can go through. Remember that some scholars, the deadlines, this is like on a rolling basis, so it's already organized by month and when they're due. Remember to take your time on them. Remember to also apply. A lot of the times what happens is that no one applies and the scholarships just kind of stay there, or only 1% applies and you automatically get it. It's up to you and how many you want to do. It's free money. So I always like to think if you write a scholarship, it takes you an hour to complete the application and you win $500. What kind of job pays you $500 per hour? Right? And that's just one way I like to think about it. I know that if I have any regrets from high school, it's for sure not doing enough scholarships, because although I did like get some, I wish I would have done more from what I know now. So that's my one advice to you.
And then someone did ask about a specific course that they took in high school. So let's say that they took an anatomy course either in college, so like a dual enrollment course. However, it was never put on my transcripts. I'm scared that it would lower my college GPA. Can I talk about that somewhere in my UC application? Should I talk about it in my PIQ questions, or in what section?
If you do enrollment, you should for sure have a transcript. It might not show up on your actual high school transcript. You might already have a college transcript. So I would ask your dual enrollment coordinator. If you pass the course, I mean, if you did well in the course, your GPA should be fine. But I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would say check in with your dual enrollment coordinator though. If you are worried about that, you can talk about it in the academic history additional comment section.
Okay, and then if you guys check our Instagram, those of you asking for scholarships, we do post some of the scholarships, as well as our ETS website has a link with scholarships. Contact your ETS advisor. They can send you a list of scholarships if you're really interested. Just because we can't list every single scholarship website available right now. Okay, but I think that's all the questions. Thank you, Paula.
I did want to ask one clarifying question, Paula. For the students who did take the school-wide SAT, if they did want to provide their score, but maybe didn't feel super confident about it, would it be worth mentioning that it was a school-wide SAT in the additional comment section of the academic portion?
Yeah, they can definitely add that. Just for more context, it doesn't hurt to add.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right, everyone. So thank you again to our presenters. I hope you all learned a lot. I know there was definitely some stuff that even was new to me. So thank you very much. As a reminder, we have our, let me share my screen with you all right now. We have our ETS social media pages, which Jasmine just alluded to. That's a great way to keep in contact with what we share in terms of scholarships and different handouts and things like that. So if you're not following us, go ahead and hit the follow button on our accounts. For the South Bay schools, that is ETS, CSULB, SB. And for the schools in the Long Beach, LA, Compton, Linwood, I think I said Long Beach already, but in those areas, you're gonna follow the first one, ETS, Trio, CSULB. We do post the same information, so if you're following either account, you're gonna get the stuff that we are providing to you. So go ahead and do either one, okay? We do have our opportunity drawing winner. I am trying to pull up their name right now. Congratulations to Odalis Lopez from Gardena High School. We will be emailing your gift card. Thank you for participating. Again, as a reminder, we do have our next workshop. We'll be covering the CSU and EOP application, or the CSU system and application overview, as well as what the EOP program is. A lot of you had UC specific questions. And so if you attended this workshop, it's more than likely that you want to apply to a UC. So on August 5th, we'll actually have another representative from UCLA this time, helping us walk through that application. So remember any of those questions that you might still have regarding the application for August 5th. Again, we added that additional workshop on the 12th. I saw in the comments a few of you asked if that's required for the certificate of completion. It is not. We would love to see you all there though, because like I mentioned, this one will be more tailored for you. We're gonna have trivia, we'll be playing Kahoot and things like that. So it'll be fun, hopefully, for you all. And then this is our flyer, remember, for KT and Jamie. Once we get a little bit closer, we'll actually email this out or send this out via remind from your advisor with the actual email to share it with. And this will be, remember only for ETS students. So if you're on this Zoom right now and you're not an ETS student, keep an eye out in the mail. For those of you that requested information on how to join, we've mailed out those applications already. So I know things are behind right now with the post office, but you should be getting them within the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for that. And then your advisors will share that information on how to submit. And like Paola mentioned, if you are going to start brainstorming those questions, we do have this PIQ handout that, again, you can ask your advisor for if you're an ETS student. This is just kind of helping you brainstorm. We will go ahead and update this with Paola's keywords for each of the questions. There's something that we already had, but I found that with my students, a lot of times it helps to break down each question individually. Instead of thinking it as, 8 PIQ questions, which one should I answer? Just boil it down to one question and what can I write on that, okay? But again, thank you all for joining us. We will see you all next week. And thanks again.